If usually the last judge to submit will announce the winner, the panel decision. If it's a 3-0, then it's a 3-0. If there's a dissenting opinion, usually the dissenting opinion goes first.
Gotcha. All right, well, congratulations everyone for making it this far. You make this tournament. Most people can. At the end of the day, it is a 3-0 for the affirmation. So I guess I'll do my RFD first. So along with that, so I was looking at some key things here throughout this. And so going into, I think it's best to start with the negatives argumentation. One thing, I guess I'll start off, this didn't play into really any of my evaluation of this round, but especially in the future, especially when you're in out rounds, so like TSC, I wouldn't do too many joke kind of argumentation. Just for me personally, I think that's kind of silly. For example, with the fire skill, if it's like a random prelim at a random tournament or whatever, I'm all for good and fun. But when I hear fire skill in an out round at TOC, I'm kind of like, and also without any real.
What did you say? Fire skill.
Isn't that what you said? Because there was a federal
thing.
The USFG.
Faceter.
Facetors. Okay, thank you. I thought it was fires, but yes, not. And so there's that. There's also. Yes.
Somebody's read T faster.
Yes. Yes, faster. But anyways, also make sure if you're going to be doing things like that, also make sure that actually, if you're going to be throwing out things, because it's going to be taking up time, that there's actually like a T shell or something that's associated with it. So you want to make sure you have actual time there. Going on to really the arguments that mattered throughout this. On the D8 debate, I largely side with the negative on the uniqueness link and internal link levels. So what ends up happening is where I do all of the impact, right, and what's going to be extended over here. So you had the whole like the Syria example and that sort of thing, and then the app I thought did a decent job with the response, talking about how not always when Trump ratings go down, we don't always see him lashing out in war in any of these or missile scenarios. So there's no necessary correlation right there, and so there also wasn't a whole lot of analysis in the negation's final speech about any potential war scenarios, just kind of vague ideas. And so there's the vague impact of geopolitical tensions that doesn't have any big impact into it or any real analysis on it. And there's also this idea that Pence passes bad policies with only the analysis of the abortion with the assumption that you should be pro-choice. And they also said something about like death. I assume that was about women and so forth, but there's no real analysis on that as well. And also, if you want to go for abortion, assumed anti-choice policies being bad is fine. Just make sure to extrapolate on how that plays within the round and how it should weigh. But different sort of thing. There's no real weighing of that right there. On to the counterplan debate. I think that I saw a lack of both teams really did this, was there's a lack of a narrative to how exactly things are going to be playing within the round. For example, what exactly does the world of the counterplan going to look like as opposed to the affirmative? There was no real like articulation on that. No real narrative building. And there also a thing that I think was a problem for the NIG was a lot of things were just kind of extended over. You could argue that I think that there's a lot of potential for the counterplan in some instances. For example, just to give one would be like the battle power. You said like this is extended over, right? However, there was no articulation of how exactly this play in the round. There was no impact calculus that I really saw, or saying how it really functions against the plan to do that. There's also, I felt like there's a lot on both sides, but especially on the NIG because it's your counterplan. Not nearly enough needs to be done on the permutation debate, but why can't you do both? Basically, all you said was that the DA is a disadd to the permutation, but then by just really only saying that, then if you lose the disadd, right, then you lose the only thing that prevents the permutation right there. Plus, the only real narration I ever got in the round about how things function in the real world was ironically, from the app on the counterplan flow, which I think is the wrong piece of flow to really have it, was the whole electoral college and how it like negatively affects real voters. I don't think that's like that great of argument, but it's the only real narrative, the only real thing that like really was talked about and had real impacts within there. So then on to the app flow, I guess enough was going to be flowing through, such as the human rights and the two evils, which I don't think are particularly compelling arguments, and there's no real narrative at all that was brought up there. But at the end of the day, I guess I ended up buying the permutation on the counterplan. On the disadd, I see no significant impacts, and there's no real calculus to how it plays in the round, and I guess some of the app flows through, and if the app has the house, then I vote for the app. Yes?
how did you evaluate the F's impacts when it was like straight up conceded throughout the entire round that neg solved for all of F?
Well, that's the permutation. I bought the permutation on the counter plan, and I didn't really see any significant, or I didn't really see any strong links or any analysis on the impacts for the disadvantages. That's why.
I mean, how did you evaluate the net benefits as like opportunity costs to the firm?
So are you saying like why do I buy the perm? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
in
guess
context.
it's really the lack, because it's the lack of neg analysis. Specifically, the only thing I ever really felt like I got on the permutation debate was that the disad prevents you from doing the permutation. But then when I feel there's not a whole lot of action going on the disadvantage, and there's not a whole lot of narrative building or real strong analysis. I mean, on the counterplan you did, but all you did was you just said like extend. You extend the biopower, but you never told me how that functions, especially in the last speech about how you can't do both, and there's no real analysis out there for me.
I can go next.
Yeah.
So, continuing on the topic of the counter plan, the assertion was made multiple times that you're solving all of the half of this counter plan. But what I have on my flow coming out today is what I see as correct argumentation that there are things unique to the account that aren't existing in the account, particularly still having the electoral college and in this KBP, we don't have complete solvency for that. We don't. Yeah, so there's sort of a conflation of preferential voting and one person one vote. And the one person one vote existing counter. It's not the same as the preferential voting. It's coming out of the constructed. And so, without encompassing all of that, I ended up not voting on the perm because the TMR wasn't going for the perm. What I ended up going for was simply do the impact of the advantage outweigh the disadvantage, and I found that they did, largely because I have the app winning on the disad link scenario, and I don't have these links. When I don't feel like these links are very strong, that the plan is increasing perception the electors are not secure in status quo. I think this is easily taken care of by the argument that people are not caring about this, and that this, before being partisan issues, in no way going to be seen having not being on the agenda. It's not being seen as a partisan issue. Them saying people are not going to care about this. It's not going to be seen as breaking any kind of campaign promise, no campaign. And in fact, this is to be played around, but to be stated, a lot of the campaign was railing against the established system. This is a hand grenade into that. But and so without buying this link scenario, the impacts that I have from the advantages.
Yeah, the reason why I voted was kind of the same as the others. When it came down to the disadvantage, it wasn't like enough impact calculus for me to really buy your impacts. They were able to kind of mitigate it enough to where I couldn't really see that happening, post plan. So with that being said, coming to the counter plan, since they're able to kind of skew the impacts up, not skew the impacts out, but kind of fight the impacts well enough to where the disadvantage doesn't really matter. I can buy that the counter plan can be permeable. So with that being said, there's just an apparent risk of solvency, so I have to vote for the F.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.